Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Arabelle Fellinger and on this channel I share my thoughts on books, movies, and more. Today, I'll be walking you through the complex masterpiece that is Haruki Murakami's Kafka on the Shore, explaining the plot and its themes, how it relates to Murakami's other works, and my own appreciation of the novel. For some context, Haruki Murakami is one of the most well-known Japanese authors of our era, mixing traditional Japanese lore and settings to Western culture and symbols, in critically acclaimed novels and short stories. His dreamlike plots, thoughtful questionings, and flowing writing have captivated a huge amount of readers. And he's also inspired a bunch of movie adaptations, such as Norwegian Wood, Burning, Tony Takatani, and of course the 2021 award-winning movie Drive My Car. You might have heard of some of his most famous works, such as Norwegian Wood, IQ 84, Men Without Women, and of course Kafka on the Shore. His books are pretty relatable, discussing themes such as urban loneliness, heartbreak, and mental illness. Kafka on the Shore can be interpreted as a modern and abstract take of the Greek tragedy Oedipus Rex. We mainly follow Kafka, a 15-year-old boy who runs away from home after his father, a famous artist, proffers a dark prophecy according to which Kafka is to kill him and then sleep with his own mother and sister, like in the Greek tragedy of Oedipus. A second plot also develops. We follow Nakata, an old man who lost all of his abilities and knowledge at the age of 9 in a war-related accident in the 1940s. He somehow gained the ability to communicate with cats, which is pretty cool. So as an adult now, and disabled, he makes his living out of finding people's missing cats. After a series of very unfortunate events, Kafka ends up killing a man. He believes it's Johnny Walker, an evil spirit. It's also the logo of a Scotch company, but let's just ignore that. In fear of the police, he ends up running away, and he meets Hoshino, a truck driver, whom Nakata reminds of his grandfather, so he accepts to embark with the old man on this strange quest that leads them to the prefecture of Takamatsu on the Japanese island of Shikoku. Meanwhile, Kafka, who's ran away without much of a plan, finds himself on a train leading to the island of Shikoku. That's where he meets Sakura, a young woman in her early 20s, who starts to offer him shelter and help. But of course, Kafka starts doubting, like with every woman he meets, if she might be his long-lost sister. So as the avid reader he is, he ends up seeking shelter in a famous library located in the prefecture of Takamatsu. That's where he meets Oshima, a transgender gay librarian who offers him help and becomes sort of a mentor for Kafka. That's also where he meets Seiki, Miss Seiki actually, the owner of the library, who's pretty mysterious. She's in his 50s, and Kafka will soon start to fall in love with her. So Miss Seiki is a pretty complicated character. Turns out when she was a teenager, she fell in love with a boy and wrote a poem for him. Later on, she turned that poem into a song, and it became an instant hit and propelled her into stardom. However, we learned that the boy she was in love with, he ended up dying in student riots later on, leaving her absolutely heartbroken, and she never really got over that grief. So she's been this shell of a person for decades and extremely heartbroken. So Kafka, he ends up, as he stays in the library, meeting the 15-year-old ghost of Miss Seiki, and he becomes absolutely infatuated with her. However, he starts doubting that Miss Seiki might actually be his mother, so that complicates stuff even more, even though he was already in love with a 50-year-old woman, which is not normal for a 15-year-old boy. Meanwhile, Nakata and Hoshimo have arrived in Takamatsu. They've been on the road this whole time. Bunch of weird stuff has happened. And basically what happens is that they have a battle with an evil spirit of sort, thinking that they'll rearrange the balance in the world by winning this battle. And during the course of it, Nakata ends up dying, which is pretty sad. Rest in peace, Nakata. And Hoshino, afterwards, he realizes he can communicate with cats. So Nakata's ability was transferred onto Hoshino as he died. It's pretty cool, I think. Back to Kafka. In the end, he ends up going up to Oshima's cabin in the woods, and he takes on this mysterious quest when two dead soldiers appear to him and lead him to this village who seems unaffected by the passage of time and is almost entirely deserted. except there he meets Miseiki's 15-year-old ghost again. He starts to become very lethargic and seduced by the strange world, but in the end he realizes he can't stay forever and has to go back in the real world. So what he does is that he turns himself into the police, because let's not forget, this whole time he has been running away, he's been reported as a missing person, and hasn't been able to help in his father's death investigation, because yeah, his father was murdered, let's remember that. And he basically goes back to his regular life as before. So it reinforces this idea that this whole story, this whole adventure, it might have just been a dream. And that's the thing with Murakami. We never know where reality ends and the fantastic, the dreams really start. The novel is extremely unclear and open to interpretation. It's hard to tell what's dream, what's reality, and what's hallucination. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it gives this dreamlike feeling that's very hard to emulate. The characters notably meet very strange and specific spirits, such as Johnny Walken, who's the logo of a Scotch company, and Colonel Sanders from KFC. There are also very oniric other elements, such as a flute made out of cats' souls, the apparition of dead soldiers, the ghost of a 15-year-old girl who's still alive, and the mention of a village which is not really present nor in time nor in space. Murakami himself said in an interview, and I quote, that Kafka on the Shore contains several riddles, but there aren't any solutions provided. Instead, several of these riddles combine, and through their interaction, the possibility of a solution takes shape. Now, here's what I make out of these riddles. Both protagonists, Kafka and Nakata, they're both very closely related, somehow. Not only did they both start their journey from Tokyo and ended up in Takamatsu, they also have some other sort of connection. Let me explain. After Nakata kills Kafka's father, they both lose consciousness. Nakata awakes in a wasteland in his neighborhood with clean clothing and no sign of having killed someone whatsoever. Meanwhile, Kafka, he wakes up with bloody clothing in a remote temple away from his residence in Takamatsu, and he starts panicking, wondering if he might have accidentally killed his father. He goes out and seeks Sakura's help, but later on, what's important is that we learn that both protagonists lost their memory in a similar fashion when they were 9 years old, both of them. Nakata lost it in the famous war accident that made him lose all of his memories, while Kafka just lost it unexpectedly, which hints at a deeper connection between both of their souls. So in a way, their bodies, their souls, their outside appearance switched in this moment where Nakata killed Kafka, which somehow realizes the prophecy, because if they share a soul or something in the style, Kafka did kill his own father. The real question, however, is what happened between Miseki and Kafka. As I said before, solitude is a recurring theme in Murakami novels, finding people to fill up the void. And I partly think that Kafka found Miseki and believed she was his mother because the prophecy prompted him to do so. I think the book is mostly about people finding surrogates for the ones they lost. And so, Kafka, seeking for his mother, found her in Miseki, while Miseki, who has been searching for her long-lost lover, saw him in the 15-year-old boy that is Kafka. They both accepted this from the other, so Kafka does accept the role of the 15-year-old girl's lover in the ghost he sees, while Seiki accepts this role of a mother when she sees Kafka. The same theory can be applied to Sakura and Kafka's relationship, because in the end they realize they couldn't possibly be siblings. However, it doesn't matter, because they've both taken to the other and found a sort of sibling love. And what Murakami, I think, is trying to teach us is that sometimes emotional bonds can be stronger than family ties. And this concept can be applied a third time with Nakata and Hoshino. Hoshino really takes to Nakata only because he sees him as his grandfather, and his grandfather, we learn, was the only person that ever really cared for him. So of course he's going to help this old man seeking his help and fill up the position he could do in a way to help his grandfather and honor his memory. Is Kafka on the Shore the most representative Murakami book? Is it quintessential Murakami? Does it somehow sum up his style? I've read 3 Murakami books so far. This is the second one I read. Before I read Norwegian Wood, and afterwards I went through Men Without Women, a collection of short stories. And I think I can say this is the closest to quintessential Murakami I've found. I accidentally stumbled across these Murakami bingos online, where you check off each square that applies to the book you're reading, and it's pretty clear Kafka on the Shore has many stereotypical Murakami elements. So first off, as in most of Murakami's books, the story focuses on a reserved, introverted young man trying to figure out what life means to him. For example, the dynamics between Sakura and Kafka are very similar to the ones in Norwegian Wood, where the quiet, introverted student Toru Watanabe falls in love with the dynamic and bold young Midori Kobayashi. Secondly, there's also a coming-of-age quest involving traveling. This is a very recurring theme in Murakami, so protagonists, such as Kafka, leave their homes unsure about who they are and enterprise a long trip and end up learning a lot about themselves and their place in the world during that trip. In Norwegian Wood, when Toru Watanabe, the protagonist, is struck by grief, he enterprises a long trip throughout Japan and ends up feeling a lot better afterwards. It's also similar to Yesterday, where a young Japanese man ends up emigrating to the United States to understand what he wants his life to be like. Or in Drive My Car, where the main plot happens when the 2 main characters leave for a lengthy trip and end up going to very important places for both of them and reflecting on the world and bonding. And lastly, the theme of the importance of art is largely discussed in the book. Oshima speaks in metaphors, translating life into Schubert's music, and Hoshino discovers François Truffaut's cinema as well as Bach's music and has a lot of interesting conversations on the importance of these movies and these songs, this music to him. So it's very recurring in Murakami novels once again. For example, in Kino's Bar, jazz records are at the center of the whole story. And let's not forget, Kafka on the Shore, the whole title comes from the song Miss Seiki recorded in her youth. So Murakami is placing music as the center of the story in a way. So overall, I'd say Kafka on the Shore is definitely the best Murakami I've read so far. It has a great plot, creative writing, and it's definitely a page-turner. It also has incredible symbolism and awesome metaphors. Overall, I'd say I'd recommend this to anyone who wants to be taken away by a fascinating story and wants to be incited to reflect on a variety of topics. So this was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down below what books I should rate next. Thank you, and see you later!